Hello, this is All Rats representing Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between Lowdown and Catechus. This was played in round 3 of the playoffs, the final round. I found this to be an extremely interesting game, and I believe I have some good practical applications from this game to show you. Let's go ahead and have a look. Okay, this is the first game of the match. They have to play 3 other boards, so just objectively from the first point, black should be satisfied with a draw here, because not only are you playing black, draw with black, win with white. Try to follow that rule if you can. This is team play. That doesn't mean black couldn't try for a win at some point, or shouldn't try for a win at some point, but you don't want to get the worst game trying to win. So let's just go through the moves a little bit. Okay. And I was talking to one chess player a number of years ago about the black defensive setup here. Anytime one side fianchettos a bishop, the opponent will set up a pawn chain to oppose it. And this isn't a bad strategy. There's many good strategies to play here. Black could go ahead and have pushed c5 and invited King's Indian reversed, being a tempo down or half move behind. But there's nothing wrong with c6, and certainly that move didn't cost him the game. White will go on and win this, but it's kind of interesting to see how this position unfolds. Okay, just normal moves so far. Bishop f5 is perfectly fine. Black should be thinking about how he's going to develop his king side. He needs to get castled here. But let's just go on. And white just playing standard moves from the King's Indian attack, preparing to play e4. Okay, 6-8-6. Let's see how long black took on that move. Okay, looks like he took just over a minute. It's not a bad move, but I'm going to question it, and I'll give you some logical reasons. Okay, I've seen a lot of players do this, and the idea is that when the bishop is attacked with eventual knight h4, that you've provided a safe haven for the bishop on h7, and you don't give up the bishop for the knight. However, unless you're really talented or playing somebody much weaker than you, you should probably avoid this type of plan, and I'll give you several reasons why. Okay, the first primary reason is that if this is something white wants, let him do it. Okay, let me just show you. Bishop d6 is a developing move. Let's go ahead and play it. Okay, now they attack the bishop and you bring it back. Now if white really wants that bishop, he can have it, but it's taken him a couple of moves to go and take it, and now black has potential attacks on the king side with this new open file. Okay, so it's not all that valuable of a strategy for white to go after that bishop, so black necessarily shouldn't try and hang on to it for dear life. If he wanted to keep the bishop, didn't have to develop it at all, could have let it sit back for a little bit, prepared for eventually an eventual e5, and let it come into play later. So that's one reason, and let's look at the other reason. Okay, the other reason is that it does create some weaknesses in the king side, and this will come into play a little bit later, as you'll see. So why weaken your king structure if you don't have to? And as I explained, any other developing move is just fine. I had given bishop d6, knight bd7 is fine. So as I point out in my video lesson 001, if you don't know theory, usually a developing move is your best choice because you've got to get your pieces out. But h6 doesn't cost black the game, but it will cause them a few problems a little down the line, and we'll see when we get there. Alright, now white just continues with his normal plan, trying to get e4 in, and one idea of queen e1 is it maintains the f file for the rook White may not want to play rook e1 because he wants the rook where it's at. Now it does create a hole on, well, not a hole, it unprotects c2, but black's not really poised to take advantage of that. He's going to have to bring the knight out to a6 in order to threaten to get it to b4, and in the moment black plays knight c6, white can just push c3 and say you're not going there, sorry. But so queen e1 is perfectly logical. White doesn't have a great deal from this position. Neither does black. They're still developing their pieces. There's still a lot of men at home. Black hasn't castled and has only developed 2 pieces. White has castled and has developed 3 pieces. 4 if you consider the queen developed on e1. But still, white doesn't have enough to claim any kind of advantage here. Okay, so bishop e7. It might have been more prudent to put the bishop on d6. The simple reason that it just takes a potential square away from a white bishop later. It also helps support e5 if black decides he wants to get that in. It'll keep the e file open. The rook can, after black castles, the rook can get to e8 and be in support of a pawn advance. So I believe bishop d6 was a more accurate move. On e7, it doesn't really have a lot of scope. White's not going to be exchanging on f6, so you don't really need the bishop to be there to retake. So we'll say that bishop e7 is a mild inaccuracy. Bishop d6 was a better square. But again, it won't cost black the game. Okay, e4. White's just going through with his normal plan, and black continues with what he intended. Bishop h7, preserving the bishop. Okay, and now white needs to get his queen off the back rank so that the rooks are connected. So these are just simple developing moves. White's not doing anything special or spectacular, but he's following a logical plan. Okay, black castles, which is good. Got to get castled. Now it's kind of interesting. White goes ahead and abandons the idea of having the rook on the f-file and puts it on e1. But that's not a bad move. White's probably saying, I want to play knight f1 and knight e3. That way I can redeploy my guys a little better, and the knight on e3 has some potential to influence the game as we go on. Okay, rook e8. Now that's probably not the best move just at this moment. As I've pointed out, often it's better to get your minor pieces developed before you commit your rooks, even though that's just what white has done. But again, the rook is less useful on e8 with that bishop on e7, so this is kind of showing why my idea of bishop e7 wasn't good and the bishop should have gone to d6. Okay, let's move on. b3, white just finally trying to get his last men developed. And now c5. I'm going to criticize this move for a number of reasons. The main reason is that knight on b8 is still undeveloped, the queen on d8 and the rook on a8 are all undeveloped. And there's nothing wrong with just simply playing knight bd7 and letting white prove that he has something here. So black has given white a couple of tempos with h6 on move 6 and now with c5 on move 11. So, but white still doesn't have a great advantage here or anything, but it's going to be close in a number of moves. Certain things can come up that white wouldn't have had black just continued developing normally. And here's the first way to exploit that, knight e5. If the knight on b8 had gone to d7, white couldn't play this move. Okay, let's go on. Queen c7. Okay, finally getting the queen developed. And white just supports the knight. And this is kind of double-edged. It targets a couple squares for holes, but it's not exactly clear how black's going to take advantage of that just yet. But again, it's kind of keeping back, and when keeps holding black's development back. That knight's got to get into d7 soon enough. You got to finish your development. Okay, a4, giving us a new square for the bishop, which was already there, but maybe it's a little better now. But anyway, now finally he gets knight bd7 in, and then white drops the knight back to c4, and it's supported. the black pawn can't get to b5 to chase it, so that's another reason for a4. So white's doing very fine here. Still, black looks solid, but the game's going to fall apart on him in a few moves, and we'll see what happens. Okay, rook d8. Now, there's black got his rook centralized, but both of them are blocked by minor pieces, so it's not all that clear black has a great deal. Now white decides, I'm going to grab some space. He gives up the d5 square, but hey, that's okay. Can't have everything. Okay, knight e4. Now white is just eyeballing d6. You plunk a knight into d6, and that's a big cramp on the black position. So one of the advantages of giving black d5 was it helped white get control of d6. Okay, so now what's funny is black decides to trade off that bishop that he spent so much time trying to protect and safeguard. Now he has to give it up, and he's wasted a few moves doing so. Okay, so I might have taken with the bishop. There's nothing wrong with queen takes. The idea of taking with the bishop is that it's pointed at the king, and maybe the queen can come down here and do some damage, but there's nothing wrong with the move. Okay. Now knight b6. I think probably at this point black should consider taking on c4 just to keep that knight out of d6, because it's going to get there shortly. Let white prove he has something here. But rook b8, I guess he's worried about this pawn. Maybe he needed to give it up. Let's just take a look. Okay, knight takes c4, b takes c4. Now you got to come back here. Okay, there went the pawn. So you've given up a pawn for this position, but you've taken some heat off. This pawn is weak. We can get on the b file here in a second. Rook b8. This is just a possible line. Nothing forced. I'm finally chasing it back. So I don't know. Maybe he had to keep the pawn. Let's go back. The players can offer some ideas here. Okay. Now suddenly the white position starts to get really strong, and now black seems to play a reasonable move. He's trying to get better control over e3, and if by doing so, or to do so, he needs to trade the dark squared bishops off. But again, it's kind of left him some weaknesses over here on the king side, and white just starts exploiting them nightly. The first theme, drop the knight into d6 where it belongs, and then black goes into e3. And this is where I first started observing the game live, and I unfortunately wasn't able to watch. I had to go do something else, but white just starts making good moves, gives up the exchange, and black really has no useful move here. White's just cramping black all over. The kingside attack is on, and white has full compensation for the sacrifice. Okay, so now f6, perfectly logical, and black is really hurting here. He can't even play g6. White just plays queen takes e3, and then threatens to take on g5, and then threatens to go to h6, which threatens mate. So this is a white game by far, and that's kind of exactly what white does. He just does it anyway, even though black didn't stop to play g6. Now he swings the rook over, getting it into play, and black's just hurting for certain. Okay, and here white makes a very strong move. Rook takes f6. No, white's a rook down, but black is hurting, and just check. Obviously he has to excuse me. Obviously he has to go to f8, otherwise it's mate. But white just sets up some mating attacks, and black really can't do anything about it. And that's how it's going to end here in just a moment. And no matter what, black gets mated next. The king has one legal move, and then queen takes f7 is mate. So very, very nice game by white, taking advantage of those small mistakes, getting the position he wanted, and then following through, something black could have avoided had he played a little more carefully. Wonderful game, white. Congratulations. I hope everybody learned from something from this, and I look forward to any comments this generates. Thanks for your time.